question. We're going to talk a little Gremlins. It's almost the 40th anniversary. We're 1 year away. Yeah, next year. What was your? How excited were you when you brought on to do your animated show, The Secrets of Mogwai, and going the origin story? Really?
Yes, I was thrilled. Okay, so when I first heard about the project, I have to admit I was like, oh, I don't know. I don't really do kids content. I don't necessarily know if I can do animation. And like, let's just go for it anyway. So I did the demo and took the meetings and got the gig. And honestly, it's like a dream job. 100% a dream job. I dig it. It's so fun, and I realized animation, like it's great storytelling. I mean, not only are we dealing with like the iconic franchise and a beloved character, and they're expanding upon it, but it's actually like really, really smart. It's really, really good, and it's totally, from a composer standpoint, it's a dream come true. I'm getting to like try new things with orchestra, just use the orchestra in a way that I haven't really been able to before because we usually don't get the budgets to do it. So.
Now, in the opening sequence, we had this cute fairy tale. We're looking at all the Mogwai. They're so cute. And then 5 seconds later, you have an eagle that wants to eat them and kill every single one. How did you set the musical tone for that? Because you had to do two very change of tone within the first 3 minutes of the show.
I mean, I think it's like anything, right? It's like I felt a true audience member at first because I'm watching it for the first time and I'm like, oh, okay, so that's what we're doing. So you kind of follow the story, but yeah, it's scare the kids, it's the Amblin way. I feel like, start out with one thing and take this on a journey and, really make it a total immersive, emotional experience.
You also, it's set in China, so did you have to do, what was that process for you kind of making music for shows set in China?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely for a show set in China, I definitely, leaned a bit more into some traditional Chinese instruments. I used an erhu, some Chinese flutes, some bamboo flutes, and some percussion as well. But it was more heavily orchestra than anything. But I would say that's what the creator Chung was really after. He really wanted to like lean into it. We don't need to make this accessible for people. We don't need, it's going to be accessible, but we don't need to shy away from it and do like a modern approach to Chinese music. He's like, no, we're in the 1920s. Stick to the decade. Stick to the feel of it. Stick to the country of origin. So
you mentioned being scared. I really enjoyed how you guys are tackling issues like animal rights, torture, circus. Like that is, I was blown away by it when I was actually watching it for you. Is that really one of the reasons you want to do it? Because you kind of you get to explore really dark themes and do animation.
Yes, like all the yes on that. But I don't think I knew it was as dark as it goes. I mean, I did read scripts, but for some reason, when you get into you see color and you see, you hear the tone of the voices, you really see something, it's something more than just animatics. I'm suddenly inspired. It's suddenly like a whole different thing. And it was actually just, like I said, it was really amazing and really fantastic to be able to switch gears, to do something emotional. And that was a big thing too. They really wanted to lean into the emotion the entire time. They're like, don't shy away from the horror, don't shy away from, there's even some psychological torture. I'm pretty sure there's psychological torture in here. Where like Sam is being mocked for his fear and his guilt. Yeah, so we're really going in, again, it's the Amblin way. But I think it's great writing. And I think it's actually pretty refreshing, because they do the right amount of making it safe for the audience, bringing it back and giving us our ground, our Sam and our Elle and Gizmo himself, just letting us branch out there and then, get scared and then come back to something that we know, Did
you want to honor the original music or the score of Gremlins, or did you just homage to it, or did you want to depart too?
All the above, and that was the request. We talked about, do we do the 80s synth here? Do we do, do we do that kind of thing? And we all kind of agreed that what the show really needed, in addition to some of the Asian elements, Chinese elements, but some of the homage paid, but it really needed the orchestral, kind of that muscular storytelling, if you will, but for the orchestra. So there was definitely that. Main title and end credits are using Jerry Goldsmith's Gremlin Rag. And there's also the Gizmo's Lullaby in there, and so the actors will sing it. So the score, that was definitely part of the scoring process as well, and that theme was kind of weaved in. But I would say for the most part, I really was given not only the opportunity, but sort of the accountability almost to create themes that were for these characters. Like Gizmo kind of has a theme already, so like then doing the themes for Sam and Elle and those characters. So it was a great.
Not only did the pilot, you did the entire season. How is that for you as a composer? You actually get to see it through, not just come in for an episode or have to follow someone else's lead. You actually create it and evolve it.
It's so true, and I honestly, I haven't worked on a project for so long that hadn't come out yet. Now it's out, but I had finished it, and we're done, and now I'm like, and now then it comes out. So I hadn't really. It's kind of weird, I think, as a composer, especially working on episodic, that oftentimes you see that episode aired and there's a reaction. Audiences have a reaction, there's conversation, and then you see another episode that airs, and then people talk about that. And sometimes, given what the audience might think, I might kind of work something else into the score, but I didn't have any of that. So as you said, I had that sort of zoomed out version, that bird's eye of everything was right there in front of me. So I think it was good because I could kind of see where everything was going, but I also had no opportunity to go back and retrofit anything. So it's like those themes gotta be, they have to work, you know?
All right, so our final question, I want to explore your superhero music score, origin story. When did you achieve your musical superhero powers and know you can actually make money at it, do something you love?
That's a good question. I feel like when we're in the thick of things, we don't actually realize the progress that we've made. I will say, at the beginning part of my career, I think where my career mostly turned a corner was when I was doing additional writing for Blake Neely, who's just one of my mentors in the industry, and he's such a great, and speaking of superheroes, he can write many different kinds of music, but superhero music is definitely one of them, and I think I cut my teeth on a lot of that kind of music through working with him and the shows that we did together. And I would say maybe it was around then, or maybe it was like shortly after when I got Kung Fu, another kind of superhero show in a sense, and just being able to kind of, I say flex in a really respectful way, but just basically like, hey, I'm in the driver's seat now, so I have to kind of really make this work. And I feel like that, that first show, and even Gremlins to a certain extent, which is a completely different kind of music from like a hybrid score than you have a very heavily orchestral score. I feel like that was the kind of moment where I was like, yeah, I can do this. I'm doing this. And I think I was doing it long before then, but to your point, I don't think it really happened in my head until more recently than maybe even my track record would show.
What was your reaction when you came on board for Wednesday?
I was excited. It's an iconic character from an iconic franchise, and having Tim Burton involved, of course, is it's going to be something unique. There's going to be a different kind of take on it. And so it was really fun to be able to just come on and work on something that, first of all, people knew about, people were excited about, and to have it turn out to be really good and something very popular. Like, we don't always get to do that. And sometimes you get to choose one. It's going to be good or people like it, and to have it be good and people liked it, and just kind of, and with great people, it was really a blast to come on and do that.
Now, there was a composer who did the Addams Family. I don't know if anybody's heard of him, Danny Elfman. I don't know. He's gone under the radar. What was it like getting to work with, I assume, maybe possibly a mentor or someone you've always looked up to?
So Danny and I have worked together over the years for about 12 years or so, in different forms of collaboration. We've co-scored a few things together, and this is one of those things where we came on to co-score. But it is, they say don't meet your heroes, and I find that to be not true in my experience. He is one of the people who I grew up looking up to as a composer, and to kind of come full circle and be working on these things with him, and there's a level of education that happens every time that happens, because I'm always learning and gleaning things, but also to be able to offer my own things and to feel like there's something that I bring to the table as well is really gratifying, and we all want to feel special and validated, and it's really great to be able to collaborate in that way.
How did you, a question about the Addams Family. How much did you want to honor, you and Danny want to honor the original, but it's also kind of make it updated for yours? Right.
We're not trying to pretend it didn't exist, but we're also not trying to do a rehashed version of it. And so, with Tim early on, Tim Burton, the director of the show, he said, "Why don't we just give little winks at it every now and then? Because mostly it's its own thing, with its own tunes, its own tone, its own vibe. But every now and then, first we use the harpsichord a lot, and then every now and then you could throw in a little da-da-da-da. Yep. That's it. And we maybe did it 6 times or so in the whole series. But it was enough that you could give your little wink to, that's about as far as we got with the homage. But da-da-da-da, super easy, and maybe if you knew it, you recognize it. If you didn't, you missed it. But either way, it's sort of there connecting.
We have a lot of students interested in going into scoring. What was about the experience going to USC that really helped shape your career?
USC, in the 1 year that I was there for the graduate program, it's incredibly immersive. which I think is, and it's in the center of the universe still. I mean, it's a global industry, but the fact that it's in the center of the universe for entertainment, you're there as a student, recording every few weeks, and also having people like, say, Danny Elfman or James Newton Howard or John Williams or whoever come into your school and talk to you. These are the people who are, they're not actually teachers, but we're going to school every time we have a chance to hear from them or go to a recording session. So being in Los Angeles and having access as a student to that level in the industry is really, and to get to leave with the real because we're recording so often. Yeah.
So when you started working on the show The Proud Family, what was important for you to setting the musical tone for the show?
Well, 20 years ago, when we first started Proud Family, there weren't a lot of animation series with starring an African-American cast and an entire African-American family. And so it's very important to be able to show, well, and let people hear, not only see these characters, but to hear these characters and hear what would the music, what would this life sound like for them? And that's what I was trying to get at. What would life be sounding like for this African-American family and the things that they go through from day to day?
Now, often people, when they score, they do the pilot, they leave, or they come in after the show is established. How is it for you to be able to evolve the music yourself throughout the series?
It's been great. You know, I love creating a sound for a show and then developing that sound for a show. That's the beauty of being in a television series, is that we do get to build it and see how it grows over year after year after year. And then what's so really unique is to then 20 years later to be on the reboot of reimagining of Proud Family, to be there again to shepherd the show through its their new stories.
Yeah, what's the challenge of doing that? Because it's 20 years, it's later. What's the challenge of kind of like updating the music, but also you want to honor the original? So
yeah, it's a trick to be retro but not old. So, you know, that's what we look for in this, and try to say, they're doing stories from today, and I think that it's pretty easy to look at these characters as they are today, what they're saying today, and respond in kind.
Let's talk a little about your origin story. When did you know you wanted to be a music composer?
I've always known that I wanted to do music. At a very young age, I started seeing a lot of musicians that I respected, like Keith Jarrett and Herbie Hancock and Miles and so on and so forth, wrote. A lot of people wrote, and I said, boy, but they wrote things around what they did strong. As Chick Corea wrote around his strong rhythmic abilities as well as melodic. And I said, oh, I'm just going to do that, you know, and that made sense to me. But I noticed that I had always heard melodies in my head since a young kid, and I wrote and wrote and wrote. I wrote my first symphony when I was 12. I wrote thousands of pieces of music by the time I was in my 20s. And my brother, Ralph, was a writer for a script writer for a show called Happy Days back in the late 70s, early 80s. And he had told me, he says, you write so much stuff, Kurt. So much different music. You should write for television. I said, Ralph, I don't even watch TV. Why would I write for it? I have no idea. And I didn't do it for a long time. And circumstances changed in my life, and I had an opportunity to do it. And I found out that it is something that I cared about a great deal, that it was very, very important to me. And today, I'd proudly say I would rather do the next great television show or film than to do the next great album. So.
All right, so you did the pilot for Blindspotting.
I did yes.
Yeah.
I did the movie.
Right,
and then
right.
I did the 2 seasons of the show.
How is it for you being able to take that and follow it through and kind of evolve the music through a TV show?
Well, it was amazing. I mean, the thing is, we also brought on another composer. We brought on Ambrose Ekenmusiri to work with me. So for the series, because we wanted a sort of slightly different perspective, you know, on the show. Because don't forget, with the show, the focus of the narrative is different. You know, in the movie, it's mostly focused on Raphael Cazal and David Diggs' character. In the show, it's more focused on Jasmine Cephas-Jones's character. And so, you know, the whole show kind of pivoted a bit. So we decided not to use anything that I wrote for the feature in the show. So we were just starting from scratch, and it was brilliant. Yeah.
Now, you also did some Guillermo del Toro. I have curiosity. What was the experience like jumping on that show?
That was a lot of fun. So I had worked with Keith Thomas, is the director of my episode called Pickman's Model, and we worked together on a film called The Vigil a few years ago. And he rang me and just said, "I've got this thing, and it's Guillermo del Toro, and I want steampunk horror, and I just want you to go crazy." It's like, "Yep, sign me up."
Actually, you led to my next question. The Vigil. You seem to like horror. What was special about that movie? Why were you drawn to that story?
On The Vigil?
Yeah.
That was brilliant. So I got this call from my agent, and she was saying, "All right, there's this small film. It's New York. It's basically, it's like horror, but from a Jewish perspective." And I was like, "Sign me up. I don't care what it is. That's the film I want to score." And and then Keith rang, and I said, "I don't care like what it takes. I really, really, really want to score this film. This is because basically his pitch was there has been so much horror in the sort of in the Christian kind of the devil and there's a lot of Christian-based horror films, but there haven't been that many Judaism-based horror films. So I was like, that alone made me really curious. So and it was just a fantastic, really creative process. They shot it for very little money, and it did super well. Played Toronto and all things and it's got a bit of a cult following. So it was a labor of love. That film, loved it.
And horror is such a visceral reaction because it's hard. So music, is that kind of you really get to hook emotions more than any other genre, you feel?
Absolutely. And you can also be a lot more creative because you can get away with things in horror that you can't get away with in, say, like a intimate family drama. You can't just do screeching, descending avant-garde strings. You can't take synths and distort them to as much as they go. It's like the horror allows you to explore your darker side as a composer.
So, Naomi, what was the experience like working on the pilot, like really starting the music?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, so we're creating themes for Zimbardo, creating themes for Naomi, and her friend. And so, yeah, it was very thematic in the beginning. And then, coming up with a very synth-driven electronic palette was like really important to Ava DuVernay. She really wanted that sort of feeling. And yeah, that was kind of like the initial vibe, just like very much electronic music and then strongly thematic with these characters.
What was the process of collaborating with Ava DuVernay?
She's amazing. I love her so much. We've collaborated before on Cherish the Day. And she's just an awesome force of nature. She knows what she wants, which I very much appreciate when a creator knows what they want. And she just let me have a lot of fun with it. Yeah.
She's my favorite. Oh, you also did Nat Joe with Gal Gadot. Yeah. Now you did the entire run of that. So for you, how was that experience being able to actually see the music through? Like you kind of involve it instead of having to leave the show or come in late.
Yeah. Let me think for a second. Oh, so sorry, for the pilot of Naomi, that became a series. Right. Yeah. But it was cool to kind of tie all those things together. But yeah, with to see it through that Nat Geo series, that was amazing. We created an opening main title theme, which was then peppered into the other episodes. But yeah, I think just maintaining really strong thematic ideas is the key to having this oral mnemonic device for the viewer and listener. Yeah.
But do you like maybe in the sense of TV where if you don't like the way things are going, you can make an adjustment compared to film where you're done?
Yeah, that's true. There's a lot of room. For example, I'm working on Good Trouble, season 5. Every season has been a little bit different, just kind of tweaking things, and the recap music's always different for every episode, and so I think there's a lot of room to play when you're working on something for quite a while, just to keep tweaking it. It's just adjacent, 1 degree deviation and then 2 degrees deviation, just making it a little bit different,
So we're at Comic-Con, and we want to know your superhero origin story. When did you get your powers, and you know that you could use your powers to make a living at things you love?
Gosh, I think probably 3. I started playing piano, and I've always been just drawn to music, and it just seemed like it was destiny, to be honest, to do something in the music field, whether it's performing live or for film and television. I've always loved music, and although my background was in the sciences and that was another track I was on, music was always a through line of my passion and drive.
And what about going to Berklee College of Music? How did that shape you?
Oh, that was amazing. So I went to Vassar College for my
first,
undergrad, and I did the Berklee's online program for their film scoring program.
Wow.
And between the two curriculum, that totally shaped me. Vassar was very much traditional, I'll become a professor and like the history of music, and then Berkeley was very much like how to like implement that into like today's modern musical world. So they're two different philosophies and how they approach their music departments, and I really appreciate both of them. And so yeah, that between the two, that shaped me. And
So in a way, maybe if you only did one of them, you wouldn't have had the same background that led you to today.
that's absolutely right. Yeah, I'm grateful for both. Yeah.
It definitely had a next-gen feel, literally and figuratively.
Yes.
How was it? What was the approach to the sound? Did you want to honor the original show? Did you want to update it? How did you guys think about the sound for that?
I mean, we definitely wanted to bring back that style of music and that style of mixing. The stuff that Dennis McCarthy did in Next Generation, and then Jerry Goldsmith and James Horner in those movies. So I was doing a lot of research ahead of time before we started recording, just listening to those soundtracks, getting sort of the general sense of, the balance between the highs and lows and how much reverb is added to things. But at the same time, there's a lot of modern elements in the show as well. Like Steven and Freddie used a lot of modern synthesizers and sample libraries and percussion and things like that. So it's kind of a blend between the orchestra sounds very old school and kind of 90s, but then we have a lot of modern elements as well in a lot of those cues.
The final Borg battle, which I thought was fantastic. Great action sequence, but also good drama with Picard trying to save his son.
Yeah.
How challenging was that, kind of doing music for that one? Because there was a lot going on there, and you didn't want the drama being overshadowed by the big battle. What was the process for that?
Yeah, I mean, that's honestly, I'm trying to remember what it's called in the soundtrack. It was called Picard Saves Jack when we were working on it. But that scene where he saves him from, the Borg kind of world that he's in is probably one of my favorite cues in the whole series. I mean, just he brings in the family theme in a solo French horn while he's talking to him, and it's just goosebumps in that scene. But then it switches after that to just huge, epic, loud orchestra, which you kind of need to punch through all of the sound effects and things like that. But when they do the final dub of the show, it trades places. Dialogue is king usually, but then sometimes there's music moments, sometimes sound effects moments. So they kind of do a dance. That's
why I was so excited that I was going to interview, because I remember watching the finale. I was like, this is awesome, the music and the sound. Like, this sequence was brilliant. So, I assume you're a fan of Star Trek?
Yes.
What was your reaction when you first saw the footage of the crew on the Enterprise, the original set?
The first time I saw that was at the scoring session. We were recording that cue. So I think, I'm trying to remember where they first see that, which episode it was. But, we're bringing back the original theme. And, we had picture running. So it's like a smaller TV in the scoring stage control room. And it's just like, oh, wow, we're doing this. Okay, this will be cool.
That was great. And my final question, we're at Comic-Con and superheroes. When did you gain your superhero powers for music and realize you can make money doing something you love?
Probably, I discovered my specific profession in high school. So I was always a music kid, playing piano and saxophone, and then do some writing here and there. But then loved music production and technology as well. And then I remember, I think sophomore year of high school or somewhere there, I was just perusing IMDb and I looked at music credits. And I'm like, oh, there's engineers that like recorded and mixed this music. That sounds like a fun gig, and that's what I ended up falling into. So it's pretty fun.
30th anniversary coming up next year of Ed Wood. What was it like working on a B-movie style from the 1950s?
We sort of, we got real clothes, and we used a lot of real clothes for the movie, which was really fun. Luckily, our actors, could fit into the period clothes, which was great. In Johnny's case, Martin's stuff was old, kind of fusty stuff from rental houses, which kind of made sense for, the feeling of Ed Wood. And then some of the more extravagant stuff we made, like Johnny's stripper outfit and stuff like that. Bill Murray's thing we made because it was so precise, like the all-white outfit and stuff that he went in the pool in. So we had a really limited budget on that movie, and it was the most exciting thing about it in a way, besides the period thing, is that it was shot in black and white.
Yeah, did that complicate your job?
No, it's just, it doesn't complicate it, but it's just, it's an odd thing sometimes. Like, you just had to learn what different colors look like in black and white. Like red is gray, like what the medium ground is and all that. So it was a nice learning process, and we had a fun time with that.
Was it fun making up Martin Landau to look like Bela Lugosi?
Yeah, it wasn't that hard. He kind of, there was just something about him, and his performance was so great. You didn't have to do a lot. You just kind of did the costume, and it worked, Now,
obviously, costume design collaborates with the makeup artist a lot, which is V. Neal in the case. What was the process of working with her to try to create the different looks?
Well, V's an amazing makeup artist, probably one of the best effects makeup artists I've ever seen in my life. So, she does little subtle things with the makeup, and then we just kind of get it all together and show Tim, and he'd be like, "Yeah, that's it," you know.
You work with Tim a lot. What is it about Tim Burton? You're like, I just love working with this guy and his vision.
He's a true artist, and he's a special, kind of unique artist in this industry, you know, because he is an animator, but he's also a director. So he has a very kind of intuitive sense of people, and he's a very kind of gentle soul, even though people look at him and go, "Oh, he's so dark," and he really isn't. He's quite funny, and it's fun to play with him. Like, it's like, you know, creatively, it's a really great.
And I assume at this point you have such a language between each other, you can just understand exactly what each other needs and wants?
Yeah, generally, we usually hit the marks, but not always. You know, sometimes it's a little bit of a struggle, or he's not sure, and, you know, we figure it out together.
So, but I want to go back in time for a quick question. Half Nelson. It's one of my favorite movies. But more importantly, it was low budget. Yeah, so what was the process trying to pull that off without, you know, the normal Hollywood big budget?
Oh, wow. So my art department was made up of 2 people. One of them was myself, and another one was my wonderful art director, who's now a fabulous production designer, Ingle Weinberg. And then we had a handful of assistants, or a handful of interns. And everybody worked for pretty much free. You know, I think I split my rate with Inbal so that she would get a paycheck, and so we're all working for $50 or $60 a day. And we were so lucky because it was Ryan Fleck and Anna Bowden who wrote this absolutely beautiful, beautiful script, and just kind of and just sort of laid out this beautiful roadmap for us to follow. And it was definitely doable on, I think it was a $400,000 budget for the whole movie. And that was thankfully before Ryan was quite as big as he is now. But we got really lucky that it was, you know, it was present day, and it was supposed to be, you know, more downtrodden, more naturalistic. So the design could kind of really lend to what the locations were that we found, and let that kind of help inform it more than anything. So.
But now you transfer to Drive, which also, you know, slightly more of a budget, if I'm not mistaken, but still not huge.
Yes.
So what was challenging designing a thing that took place, a lot of it driving? So was that a different kind of challenge?
It was. Whereas Half Nelson was almost entirely location based, and it was, you know, it was a very contained movie. Drive, you know, and $400,000. Drive was about $12 million, and that was the biggest movie by far that I had done at that point. And we actually did some set builds. We built Ryan's apartment. We built Carrie Mulligan's apartment. We built the strip club. And so it was my first time working with construction team, and that was just a giant learning experience, and an actual scenic team, and just giant learning experience of learning how to have those conversations with those guys, learning how to move that process along. And it was the first time that I really got to experiment with wallpaper. That was the beginning of my long-standing love affair with wallpaper.
So do you think this really helped you as a production designer, getting the indie experience, the gritty experience, then when you graduate to Suicide Squad, do you think you were more ready to jump to the bigger budget?
Absolutely. I say constantly, I feel like my indie background absolutely prepared me for this, in that it gave me resourcefulness, and it let me realize what things to really focus on, and what things to consider precious, and what things aren't precious and you can let go and you can move quickly on. I think it's easy a lot of times in these giant movies to let yourself kind of get stuck and kind of fixate on one giant world and not make decisions quickly and move on. Whereas in independent film world, you have to prep, shoot, and wrap the whole thing in 8 weeks. And so it makes you much faster at making quick decisions, sticking with your gut, not questioning yourself, and figuring out how to pull things off with whatever the money is that you have. So.
It must be fun creatively tackling on a fantastical world.
Yes, it does not get better than Guardians of the Galaxy 3. I've got to say, Suicide Squad was a dream, but it was also Earth-based, and it was more reality-based. But Guardians, not aside from the very end at Grandpa Quill's house, not a toe touch his foot onto planet Earth, and so every single thing needs to be designed, which is just for my role, it's a dream come true. You can't.
Guardians of the Galaxy. Yes. When you first read the script, what was your initial creative reaction?
I mean, it read as dark as it seemed on film. It was that dark, and you're reading Rocket being tortured. You're reading all that stuff that was so hardcore to see on screen. So it was a little jarring, honestly. But also the best part about it was because all those characters have been established and everybody knows and loves them, it's like you heard all their voices. It's not like a normal script where you're reading it and like, I don't really know who this is. This was like, you know, you read Drax and you could hear his like humor, like all of that was like, it was just, you knew, you could picture it all happening right before your eyes, so.
Now, you read the script, you enjoy the script, but you actually have to make the movie. So now that's oh my God, I love the movie, but I really kind of, oh my God, I got to figure out how to do this. What for you was the most challenging aspect, or the scene or sequence most hardest to perform?
I mean, this pure scope of it was the biggest challenge because it was so big. I mean, it's bigger than anything I've ever seen, like as far as set builds. But Orgo was the biggest challenge, like just, you know, the meat rings, and it was just so unlike anything you'd ever seen before. So it was like once we, you know, it took so long to crack what that was, and then when we did, then it was easy. You know, you knew it was meat and skin and fur and all that, so, yeah.
I'm assuming, obviously there's a lot of special effects, green screen, but also practical sets. Yeah. I'm assuming that it's really good for the actors to get the practical sets, because it's such a fantastical world, it probably grounds them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was interesting, one of the fans of that came up to us after and was just like, thank you so much. It was very apparent in watching the film that they were in real environments, and that's exactly what he wanted from day one. It was like, you lose it in all this CG that everybody's relying on now. So, yeah, it worked. You know, you can really tell when it's real set. So,
the Assistant Directors Guild gave you an apprenticeship for Abbott Elementary. What was the process like working on the show?
It was great. I had super fun, and then I actually got hired by the production designer, who is Michael Whetstone, and the art director was Susan Wexler. So like, I worked on Abbott as an art PA, but I was looking to join the union as an assistant art director, and I was in the trainee program. So like, Michael hired me, and then I kind of like worked with Michael one-on-one to do all the research for all the episodes of season 1 on Abbott Elementary. So as soon as I got a script, I was like, okay, I'm the one with the highlighter pen and everything, like doing it for Michael and telling him, okay, this is the prop, this is how we see, you know, this is the classroom and these are the sets that we see. And then based on that, he will give me a cue, and then I would do the research one on him, and we would have like this entire room filled with all my references per episode. Like if there is like for the Desking Empire episode, if you see, so I kind of like did the research and I got all the plans for all the classroom, and I put the board together, and then students were stepping on the desk. So I kind of like hand drew all the footsteps of the kids, and I drew hand the footsteps around the board, and these kind of like connected with it. And then I'm a very tactile person. I love patterns and colors and tiles. So I kind of like also got a thread, and then the thread kind of like signified like all of these things are connected, because at the end of the episode, they're trying to find who is this kid who actually started this, and who are these kids who are like stepping on all of these. So like stuff like that. So like every single episode I did the research with Michael, and we would decide on an idea, and then we would pitch it to Quinta, who is the showrunner for Abbott Elementary, and she's a great person. She has a very clear vision. Not many people know very clearly what they want, but she does. And that kind of really helped the whole art department to kind of like really narrow it down to the final thing. So like, I had super fun working on Abbott season 1.
All right, so Everything Everywhere All at Once. You read the script. What was your initial reaction on how you actually going to do this?
Ironically, I understood everything. There are scripts that I try to read, especially working on Westworld, where they throw you for one, and it's hard to keep up the stamina and really dive deep, but Everything Everywhere All at Once made so much sense, I can't explain it. I did have to take a nap in between it, but like I woke up from that nap and it was like starting right back where I left off, and it was just completely engaging. I was reading Hot Dog Hands and weird alternate universes, and I was like, oh, okay. It really made so much sense that it's hard to explain. I've worked with Jason Kisvardi before, kind of his friends on some smaller projects, and I've loved and admired the Daniels for a very long time, so I know the aesthetic. I think the same way, and also when Jason, I knew he'd come to the table with exactly what was in my head as well. We all had the same vision. It's hard to explain, but it didn't seem hard or challenging. Even the production was not that hard or challenging, because we were all on the same wavelength.
Well, it must be kind of fun because it's pushing you too, though. This is not just a straightforward, linear story. So it must be actually a little more creatively fun than compared to other projects.
Absolutely. It was very creatively engaging. Also, it's just fun to do special effects in real life. I've been niched into a world where there's like a lot of green screen and blue screen and fake things and fishing line and all that stuff. And this was like, we did everything for the most part in camera, which is really exciting. Logistically figuring that out and working with props and special effects and set decoration for things to just like explode or fold or whatever it is. It's like, it's very fun.
Well, it must have been great for the cast too, being able to get into the, because that's a hard role to get into, like the actors, but having those little more practical sets must have really helped them.
Yeah, having everything there and like really feeling these spaces was probably helpful. And we always hope to do that as production designers and art directors, to create a world that the actors are able to feed off of. So everyone was feeding. They had quite a feast. It was a lot of fun.
I assume though it would be hard if you had hot dog hands to do your job.
There was a moment where I like left my computer to walk downstairs to check on set, and there was a photo shoot of the hot dog hands. I hadn't seen them yet. We hadn't started using them yet, and I was like, gosh, that looks so challenging. So yeah, doing my job with hot dogs hands would be so hard.
As from the producing, let's talk about the producing angle. How concerned were you about actually pulling it off? Because it's a complicated, Sharknado is a very complicated thing to pull off.
Film that really came together in the editing and the visual effects, and I saw none of that when I first read the script. Didn't have a lot of faith in it. Did it to provide for my family, get my health care from the union, and this would secure that I was going to have a baby. This was this was more about providing for my family rather than making art.
But, you know, for the fans, I mean, well, I grew up in the 50s and 70s where the monster movie was a big one, you know, the big ants. You've actually kind of revitalized it. The Thing, exactly.
The crawling eye.
Yeah, but it was, you actually brought that back. This is...
Right.
So did you feel a kinship, like, wow, this genre has been lost for a long time. It's kind of nice that it's being embraced because, you know, your fans love it.
You know, it's interesting you made those parallels because I do see a certain sameness about it, where there were these grand, over-the-top, hard-to-believe villains, and you know the actors played it very straight in those movies, and yeah, so there are some parallels there. I didn't realize that at the time, but you've brought that to mind, and I have to agree with you.
Well, that's actually my students, I was saying the exact same thing. The fact that you took it seriously gives it a little more weight. Because if you were mocking it, you were mocking it, it would have been a distraction for the audience.
Yeah, well, the script never left room to mock it, you know, and I have to take what the writer's given me, and, you know, every actor's shoots to elevate the material in any way they can by bringing their life to the character, and it just, you know, there was never a doubt that Finn Shepard is you know, a fish out of water, if I may, hero in this movie. He really just wanted to get back with his wife and found himself doing everything he can to do that, going out, you know, on a limb to keep everybody safe.
It's actually interesting you said. Now I'm thinking, now you're getting me thinking, it was actually the emotional thing that makes it more interesting. It kind of carries you through it. Without the family thing, right, it would have just been, I think the movie would have been ignored.
That was the subtext for me. That was the fire. That was the why Finn Shepard did what he did, you know, and there's nothing that guy wouldn't do for his family, and I just tried to embody that in bringing the character to life, and it just came across, you know, all business, and that's how it played. It kind of worked out, I guess, huh?
So you've been a part of two, Beverly Hills 90210 and this. The fans love these shows. How's it been for you, like the fan experience? They come up to you, I know they come up all the time, but the appreciation, they actually enjoy that you've done lightning the bottle twice.
Yeah, I've been very fortunate. This is my 47th year as a professional actor. Can't even believe that myself. But been very fortunate to be a part of projects that have, you know, touched people in a very positive way of different demographics. I've done Malibu Rescue a couple of years back, and little kids come up to me and say, "Oh my God, you're Garvin," or Sharknado fans, 90210 fans. I've got Guiding Light fans from a soap opera I did in the late '80s, and or Dancing with the Stars, all the grandmas that come up, oh, you should have won. It's being an actor is it's challenging and it's so rewarding. And when I really just wanted to sing and dance when I was a kid, and I parlayed class clown into a career. And I don't do it for fame. It's a byproduct of being lucky and being prepared, being the right guy at the right time. And it's such a wonderful give back when someone comes up and tells me, hey man, I see your stuff and I dig it, and you lit me up, and we named our kid Finn, or Steve Sanders was our favorite character, or whatever it was. It's very flattering, and I'm very grateful to be an actor and to be in a position where I've been a part of these projects that have had global recognition.
Did you realize you were making a documentary, or was that just? No?
Yes, no. The entire time when we were doing this film, it was very, very important that we captured. So you know, when I come from Northern California, and out in the middle of nowhere, when I was a kid, there was a Sharknado that manifested itself, and all of us kind of banded together, and we had to stop it. And the only thing that we had in our vicinity, because we're out in the middle of nowhere, was this hardware store. So we went and got hedge clippers and chainsaws, and we stopped it. But the government, when that happened, they came in and they put a tent over everything, and they got rid of all the evidence, because in a small town you don't want people to know there was a bunch of sharks that were in a tornado. So then, as I got older, I blocked it out because I went through a lot of sessions with the government about this, and then I go, oh, Sharknado is a great. Oh, that happened. Doesn't matter. We're making a movie about it anyway. So it is a documentary.
Seriously though, the thing I loved about it, and I talked to Ian about it a little. The 1950s and 70s had a lot of these monster movies. Empire of the Ants, The Blob, The Thing. It's been a long dead genre. In a lot of ways, you brought it back. How has it been for you kind of bringing us back to the classic genre in a very serious way?
Well, I'll give sci-fi credit, because they did like 150 plus of these types of movies on their Saturday Night Movies. So you were getting things like Mansquito and Sharktopus. And, I was tasked with coming up with ridiculous ideas sometimes. And one of them with Jacob Hare and I pitched Sharknado a couple times, and that's where it came from, was like, let's do something crazy. And when that word salad came together, we just loved what it was, and we knew there was something special about it. Didn't realize that everybody else would soon find something special about it too, because how many of these things, you've had mashups before, but I think it was because we were unafraid to just have fun with the concept. We didn't take the premise, we took the characters and the situation seriously, but we go, it's all, everything's fair game. I'll say that the thing that changed everything was when we were doing the first movie, I had so many people ask me or tell me, sharks can't exist in tornadoes. And I would go, yeah, and robots don't turn into cars. Why are we so hung up on this? And I go, the thing is the reason they exist is they're not sharks. It's not a tornado. It's a Sharknado, and that's our villain. And so because of that, every subsequent movie, that was the mythology, is that it could do whatever we tell it to do. So it can take down a plane, it can time travel, because it's not sharks in a tornado, it's a Sharknado. And that actually was liberating, because it just opened up the floodgates to imagination.
Well, I think what also helps is it is a guy just trying to save his family. So you're grounding it in reality. Do you think that helped kind of let us accept the fantasy?
Well, yeah, and I think that's actually a lot of these movies in general. It's like, oh, the scientist is going to go solve this problem, or the military is going to solve the problem. And in this case, it was this family. And when I was working on it before we started shooting, I was like, here's Finn, who has to lose everything at the beginning of the movie to gain something, and that makes it an interesting, compelling story. He loses his bar. He had previously lost his wife, and he was estranged from his family in a weird way. He loses his car, and he loses, everything is gone at the end of the film. But he has a sense of family at the end of that movie, and that actually was the mandate for each subsequent movies, was let's show this evolution of this family in all 6 movies. And yes, that's why I think people resonated, because they could relate to him. The second movie was about renewing the vows with April. Third one was about getting a chance to do having a kid again. And 4th through 6 was basically kind of rebuilding everything to the point where time got reset to 2013 in that bar, and all the good deeds and things that he did, he's in a much better place. And that was, and I think that's why people related to whether whether you want to accept it or not. As subconsciously you were rooting for these characters, and we got to follow them all the way through with the same leads. Ian and Tara both came back, same director, all 6 movies, which never happens in a franchise. You might have someone that comes in 2 or 3, but we were there from the beginning, and I think that's what's special about the film.
Now, what I'm excited about, I love movies in the movie theater. It's my favorite thing. How is it, because next month we get to see Sharknado on the big screen. How has that been for you?
It's been a blast because I get to finally finish the movie. These were TV movies. We had 6 months from start to finish, and some stuff was abandoned, like we couldn't finish some shots, or there was other stuff, and it was color corrected by our different color corrector than we normally did. Who did a fine job, but toward the end of the movie it just got washed out, and I've seen it on the screen previously, and it's just like. I just as a filmmaker, my heart sinks. So I go, if we're going to remaster it, can we recolor credit? Sure. Hey, maybe we should 4K it. And then I go, why don't you go look in the archives and see if there's anything else to put in the movie? So I got to do my own George Lucas special edition, except in this case, I get to kind of finish it and make it a little better. There's a few extra shots that were originally intended that we couldn't finish, so they didn't end up in the movie. So now they're in this version. A lot of the shots are being up-res to 4K, so I mean it looks pristine, and I get to color correct the movie. So we say it's more sharks and more NATO, but it's also just the movie is always going to exist as a sci-fi movie, the original movie. This is just we're calling it the theatrical experience. So there's a whole generation of people that know of Sharknado that have never seen it. So now they can watch it and not go, oh, it's a little fuzzy and it's a little out of focus or whatever, because it's up-resed. But here it's now the full theatrical experience. And recently, Joe Bob Briggs had the last drive-in. They had the original on Shudder. And I was following on Twitter and doing some live tweeting, and I realized that 80 to 90% of the people that were watching it had never seen the first movie. There's this impression of what Sharknado is, but people don't know what it is because it's just something they've heard. So we're going to have the fans that are come out, but we're going to introduce a whole new generation to this, and that's why I think it worked, because we dared people to watch our movie, going, "There's no way they can live up to this premise." And then if you watch the film, it's like every 5-10 minutes something crazy is happening, which you're not supposed to be able to do on a budget that we had and the time we had to make it. And so I think that's why people have this affinity for it, because it just doesn't stop. It just keeps topping itself. And we didn't even give away everything we had in the trailer, which normally these low-budget movies, you give everything away in the trailer. But you watch it going, they did that. So it's pretty awesome.